Right, it's a bit later now. Still in Act 1 of Traviata. I've scrubbed it down with the kitchen scrubber and a little bit of encouragement from the paintbrush here and there. I have been able to get the motif up here burnished a bit better. She looks, I haven't over cleaned it. I don't want to overdo any of it. You can see that the gilding in the motifs here is pretty good quality. So now I'm just going to wash it off in fresh water and then dry it down and see how it looks before the next phase of drying it off and then applying the blacking to it. And the one that I'm going to use is the one that Treetop Spider recommended in his latter videos, which is Mull Black, which comes from the factory, the manufacturers, and actually it's very good because they put in a note of what you should do and what you shouldn't do on how to clean. So it's really very useful. It's fairly comprehensive. So that's that. I hope that's going to be cleaner than it was before. A bit of a dry off with a towel and then use some paper toweling to get it nice and cleanly dried off. So now I'll do it with some paper toweling, which is what they recommend. You can see I've had it on wooden chocks so that any excess water is not absorbed into the underside of it, where you've got plaster Paris, which is used as the adherent to stick these slabs together. If I'd taken it to pieces, which I might have done had it been in a worse condition, which is illustrated in Treetop Spider, his videos, then I would have probably got the pillars a bit shinier, but I've decided to leave them more or less as they are so that they reflect a certain amount of age and originality. So now I'm going to leave that to dry and come back to it later and apply the Mull Black blacking with a cloth. So we'll see how that comes out later. It may not be good enough. I'll have to see. Now I've been attacking this column here for 20 minutes to try and get the dirt which is ingrained into the various parts in the pediment and the Corinthian top out. I don't want to get it all shiny because I feel it just would be better the way it is at the moment, just rather subdued. This is looking better than this one, which has already had a bit of a clean. So I want to get this like that, and I'll show you. There's a difference in it. Not a great deal of difference, but I think it's going to be enough to make it look old but clean and just bring through the age, as it were, which will, I think, be better than doing it too much. Anyway, I can't get in there, and I'm still a bit puzzled as to how I'm going to clean up some of this when it dries off. So I think that looks a bit better than this, which is rather duller. So I'll spend another 20 minutes or so cleaning that one up with a paintbrush. It's very soft and very gentle, but it just gives it a bit more of a sort of a nice patina and finish. Well, I think it'll be better. I'll come back in a minute. Well, I've been trying a little more to get this back to something which is without the stains, and I find it very difficult. I tried the back with wire wool there, and the stains are still there, and that's as it was before on this side. But on the body of the clock, it seems that there's a lot of these little marks here, which I think, like that going across there, I think are old polish marks. And I've used this kitchen sink scourer, which is pretty worn out, to try and clean it up a bit, and it's worked quite well on this side. Well, it's wet mark, and it's not nearly as bad on this side as it is on this side. So I'm going to have a go at this to see if that does anything. But it required quite a lot of pushing and scrubbing, but I don't want to scar it and mark it with scratches, because it's, you know, really a sort of a polished surface as it is. And see, there's something there which looks like it's old polish. I think it might be an accumulation of wax that is very stubborn to get off. I don't want to use anything that's truly abrasive, like sandpaper. I've tried it, because it'll take the polish off. I don't know if you can see the polish on the top there, but there is a bit of a polish up there, and I want to retain that. Now let's see if that's going to be any better. And yet again, I'm really sort of trying to scar this as if it was a kitchen pan. Right, so that's that. Now, I say kitchen towel is the best thing to clean it off with. Bit of clean water. There we are. Well, it's quite clean. There's nothing on it, on the paper. That might be the answer, but I can still see some marks there. I hope that when I put the blacking on, it'll cover those. So I'll do the other side now. This side over here, you can see that's pretty grotty. If I can get rid of those marks, that'll help, and ones down here as well. So I'll come back on that in a minute. Well, I've got on with this, and I've nearly got where I want to, but there are still some marks. And what I find is interesting, since this is the first clock like this I've ever done, is that I've got this part of the slate here, I've scrubbed it pretty clean, but there are certain marks here and there, which if I rub with my fingernail, they come out shiny, as if there's a varnish or a wax finish or some sort of coating there. And I haven't quite got through to the stone underneath. So it's I think it's just good deal more hard work to try and get back to where I should do. I'm just frightened that these things, these imperfections here, are going to show through when I put the mould back on to get it into colour. So I'll keep at it and come back eventually. Well, we're making progress. I've resorted to using a toothbrush now on these columns because I want to get them brightened but not too vivid, because I mean, damn it, the clock is 100 years old or 150 years old, I'm not quite sure how. And you don't really want to have it, I don't anyway, so that it looks absolutely brand spanking new, because it is old. Anyway, I'm hoping to get these columns done. And I've taken off the old polish. There is old polish on this, which is a real nightmare to get off, and it takes an awful lot of difficult scrubbing with the right implements to get it. I'm slowly getting there with these columns. They are better, and this has turned out quite well. There, I mean, that's much better than it was before, and it's not over cleaned. It's got brass here and some sort of brass finish there and a sort of gilt finish there. And that's the sort of finish that seems to be on the pillars, but I can't work it out really. Anyway, this end worked out reasonably well. It's better than it was, and that end's not too bad. But in here you can see you've got this encrusted goodness knows what. And that's, I'm sure it's all got to come off. I've got some of it off on this side, but it hasn't dried off yet, and we'll see how that looks. But it's a long, hard process. You've got to keep at it. Now, and there's no hurry. You can't hurry. You just got to keep at it, and it's quite hard work too. But I think at the end of it, it'll be well worth doing. And I'm looking forward to seeing how the... I've cleaned up the brass on the left-hand pillar, on the Corinthian head and the pedestal. As you can see, it's much better than it is on the right-hand side, where it's still pretty grubby. I'll have a go at that. And then there's the stains on the inside of the column down here and there, which need attention. I've done them on the other side to a certain extent, but you can see that there's a certain cloudiness in it on those that I hope I'll be able to, there, you can see that. I've got to get that off as well. So we'll see how it goes. Now to try and polish them, these little sections. What I have noticed is that this pillar is not true. It's leaning from the top to the bottom, and it's not vertical, which is a really worrying thing. I think what I'll do is to do my best to get this right, and if it doesn't work, then I'll have to take the top section off at the risk of breaking it to get this pillar column vertical. See, it's off at the top. Maybe it's all right for 100 years, but it's not good for me. Well, that's the next stage. I've polished up both the columns, the Corinthian heads and the pedestals. You can see they're quite shiny now, but not overdone, I hope. There's still a lot of powdered grey in the alcoves there, and this column is out of true. It's just leaning over at the top here. It's not absolutely true, and I think even this one seems to be perhaps leaning forward a little. I hope that's going to be all right, because otherwise it might mean taking the top off, which would be a complicated job and could possibly end up in disaster. But I hope it doesn't do that. I'll see how it comes out when it's been blacked.